in war always there is no winner. There is distraction, but no one wins. Yeah, based on your capacity, you can destroy more, but you will never win. You always lose, and it's a lose-lose situation. I don't have Sudanese people who are now fighting in Sudan. Post parties should look at it that way, because more they continue fighting, more they continue lose, more distraction will happen. Then all this will be cutting from the life and the Sudanese people blood to rebuild that again. And it takes generation and generation to just build what war could destroy in 1 year, 2 years. It takes time to reconstruct that, and I wish it stopped sooner than later. My name is Yasser Essa. I am a humanitarian practitioner, human rights defender, and social activist. I'm also an independent scholar with a degree in governance and development. I also have a master's in conflict resolution and coexistence. By nature, I am a very pro-peace person, deeply committed to social justice, nonviolent actions for change. My work centers around collective liberation from oppression, racism, and colonial legacy. Also with a strong focus on participatory policy advocacy and practical civic engagement. I'm currently working as a program manager for a restorative justice organization in Canada here, while I also being involved in initiatives that promote good governance through community-based engagement, capacity building, and fostering inclusive partnership to end war in Sudan. I strive to empower communities, in particular youth and women, to build peaceful, cohesive societies grounded in coexistence and collective well-being. When the crisis started in Darfur, and by the crisis here I mean the Darfur genocide, if people have an idea of it, which took place in 2003 in Sudan, I became engaged in human rights defending during that time through grassroots community work, as the target community was my community, and I witnessed the direct and systematic ethnic cleansing that happened against my people, and I also saw how that brought into the surface the inequities that our own community had in relation to how they treat women, and especially marginalized group in Darfur, and women are considered the biggest number of that, because they are not involved, they are not included in decision making. And this experience awakened a deep sense of responsibility within me to challenge the male controlled norms and advocate for equal treatment between women and men. At that time the term gender came in and everybody was advocating for that, so I engaged in gender equity at that time. Over time I started incorporating gender justice into my broader activism, either is within the humanitarian field or good governance or advocacy for social policy change. My goal was basically to unlock the full potential of women and youth within my community, to create a supportive environment that will enable them to participate actively in leadership, but also in a political change. Ultimately, that will enhance the social transformation that I wanted to see in my community. I'm from Darfur, and Darfur is western side of Sudan, neighboring Chad, part of Central Africa, the Libya, and in the north we also bordering Egypt. But we are part of Sudan's Darfur was an independent sultanate until 1916. Then it became part of Sudan when British took over from the Turkish colony, because Darfur was like in a good term with Turkish at that time. When British took over after they won the First World War, they make Sudan I mean Darfur part of Sudan, and that is where Darfur was being demolished completely because they were against the British in that war, and the power was taken over from them. Since that time up to date, Darfur was severely marginalized from equally being treated, and this what led to the people revolution, and people took arm to demand for participation in the political arena, but also equal share of resource, because the central government used to like observe resources, especially gold, agriculture resource, including livestock from Darfur, but nothing comes back as development or even security. People do not have security at that time. So many things happen, but the central government did not engage, and that is where the armed revolution started in Darfur in 2002. The government of Sudan, in response to that, they initiated paramilitary groups. They call them Janjaweed at that time, and those are basically the nomads from Darfur. I will not say Arabs and African, because everybody is African, and this is how people misdefine it as African and Arabs, but I will say nomads and farmers. So the government chose to train and equip and arm the nomads group against the farmers group, and that is where the genocide happened in 2003, where almost the size of French was being wiped out. People have been forced to displacement and seek refuge in Chad, and many people have been killed. Over, I believe, over 2.5 million people have been killed at that time, and United Nations has like classified it as a genocide, crime against humanity, and war crimes at that time. This is why al-Bashir and many people who were being in power at that time have been labeled as war criminals, and they wanted by the International Criminal Court. Sudan, I faced so many challenges because it is very risky. Advocating for social justice and human rights in Sudan was so much risky, especially during the former regime time. And as someone coming from the target community, the Fur and Masalit and the Gawas who are being targeted at that time, it was so much risky for me not to only just advocate, but also working with people from outside, because the international community came at that time as humanitarian organization, and there was so much surveillance on people and threats and intimidation from the authorities to like, especially for those conservative groups. They also went against that. They think it's forbidden to receive aid from outside. It's like they label it in a different way to make it look bad, and they really oppose on us a very superficial or oppressive methods to shut us down, not to work. I was being personally arrested several times for just my work of engaging in humanitarian aid provision, or even engaging in mobilizing my community just to talk about issues related to them. I was being continuously targeted for that until I left Sudan in 2014 to go for my studies. Then when the regime overthrown, I came back again to Sudan to continue and contribute to the political climate. Was very hostile at that time still, and the civic activism particularly was being very challenged due to the power structure, and demanding accountability in context like that is very dangerous for someone who wants to be right when things are wrong, and especially when there's no accountability among power holders. Despite those challenges, I remain committed to peaceful methods of advocacy and community empowerment throughout my work in Sudan. Call it an exile, but also forced exile, because if the situation was suitable in Sudan, I will rather go back and apply whatever skills I earned from my study journey to a Sudan context, because that is where I came from. I am more familiar with the context. I understand the geopolitics of the area, and it's much easier for me to impact or influence or contribute to the community that I came from, where I will feel I am making a tangible result and changes. So I will call this one a forced exile, because it's not something I chose. I find myself I could not go back to Sudan, and then I had to come here. So I define it as as forced exile. While I am physically distant from Sudan and the community that I once worked with directly, I have found new ways to support the Sudanese community through digital platforms and social media, advocating for peace and also seeking international advocacy and diasporic network to advocate for ending war in Sudan recently, but before that also seeking civic governance, because the military coup took place. That is where every disturbance within Sudan started at that time in 2021, where the civilian government that all Sudanese hope that will bring the change have been overthrown by that military coup. So I started advocating for that before the war started. Then everything shifted to the prioritizing of ending the war and helping people within Sudan who are trapped in that war with the humanitarian assistance and all possibilities of saving their life. So the exile itself, even though it's an event that turned over my life a little bit, but um, it has branded my new perspective and allowed me to connect with people globally who really into social justice, and I get to know other platforms related to global movement in terms of human rights defending, amplifying the voices of diverse groups globally who have been oppressed, and also grounded the ongoing devastating war in Sudan. So this is how I find myself. The exile generally advocated, contributed more, even though it was an event that started negatively, but I'm managing myself on how I could turn it in something positive to make use of it. Involved in several initiatives that focus on civic education, as I repeatedly mentioned, including digital advocacy and diaspora engagement due to the exile situation. One of my key projects that I involved in is the Sudan Solidarity Collective Group, and this platform is basically building a cohesion community of Sudanese, connect Sudanese activists together in the exile, and also with the local civil societies and actors that share the same interests, the same human rights defending, the same social justice, the same pro peace people and like-minded people, to share resources and also discuss strategies of how we can engage, and also creating solidarity in general. I also focus personally through my posting and writings in creating awareness and advocating for ending the war in Sudan. And excitingly, I'm also writing my book about the impact of Sudan state institution in social justice, just to ensure that this critical historical turn of Sudan, I could contribute to advocating for policy dialogue on transitional justice and post-conflict construction, also advocating for inclusive institutional reforms within Sudan, advocating for good governance and social justice in general. Sudanese people to advocate for ending war is so much complex. Because the war is internal, then it makes it more harder in this context to activate to like bring people collectively to advocate for ending the war, especially in the diaspora, because people are so much divided and confused by who they should belong to. Is it the military or the rapid support forces? And it's very hard for any Sudanese to speak about the whole Sudan as next step or future anticipation, what should be or how it should be look like. I don't think it will be fair, but I will say now what how do I how do my activism evolve within the current situation of Sudan. I just trying my best to be part of the diaspora and see what we could do by to advocate for ending the war. That is first. Also, bringing to the intention of the international community how devastating this war are, and how the people who are inside or even those who have been forced to refuge or displacement suffering from this war with no humanitarian adequate response to save their lives. So this is our basic my basic focus, to just get connected to people with this like-minded, pushing away our differences and focusing on those three areas. How interact like the gender now with the issue of gender advocacy or activism in Sudan among diaspora is becoming more intersectional, and youth are the one who leading this more, like they engaging more because there's awareness happening, there's a weakening happening, and there's a growing recognition of the needs of to address gender issues within Sudan, especially after the war. We open up to people who displace and move out. They get to open up to new realities, new contexts where they understand how the inequity and injustice within their society was looking like. It's a new opportunity, even though it's a devastating thing, but it's a good way of looking at things from a different perspective. Also, it intersects with class, ethnicities, and displacement for the current situation. Activists are increasingly using digital platforms to mobilize their communities, educate people about this, create advocacy, and also more resilience to adaptive social justice movement. The second question related to what cross-border diaspora collaboration look like is hard. It's moreover we have to provide a lifeline activism in Exile. It's a bridge. It's a bridge for those who is still on the ground, because their voices cannot come. They don't have the same safety. They don't have the same capability and capacity to advocate for themselves. So I think when we as people in the Exile understanding and coming from that context, is we represent that voice for those people who are really struggling inside Sudan and trapped in that war. The network will also enable us to exchange knowledge with other global platforms, resource and mobilize to collectively act beyond our borders. Also help us to keep the international community attention on the war in Sudan, highlight the struggles of Sudanese people, and also seek support or mobilize support for the humanitarian crisis that's happening now in Sudan, and ensure the local voices are heard in a global forums. The future, how it will look like, I touched a little bit about it because it's hard for the current Sudanese, one individual, to define how the future will look like for Sudan. The war left nothing for us as Sudanese. It divided us badly. It destroyed every ground that we could stand for. But I will still say, from my perspective as governors and development students or scholar, and someone with conflict resolution and coexistence background, my long run term to contribute to a just and inclusive Sudan where all people, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, or background can coexist with dignity and freedom. I aim to contribute to building a platform that empower youth and women to engage actively and effectively in their communities, support them to emerge as future current leaders, but also future leaders, because most of our problem came from the incompetitive leadership we have in place in Sudan now. And by engaging youth and preparing them, this could be one of our alternatives to get away of this. Also promoting non-civic engagement, because war have no benefit. No matter how long people fought, they will come to peace one day, and we don't have necessary to go to war. I also hope to mentor the next generation of activists with the capacity I have, and scholars to commit to transformative political reform and social justice within Sudan, because those are the root causes of our war in our context. This usually, like every government, every politician has their own agenda that they have to serve based on the manifestation or the campaign they had. And Canada recently had their own campaign with promises to the public, so they will focus on that. Sudan will not be priority, but I will say this: I want not only just Canadians, but the global citizens, the global good citizens, to put pressure in their governments and to keep an eye on the war in Sudan. It's not less than anything else happening somewhere else. People are suffering there. People are devastatedly forced to displacement. I want them to align and support Sudanese people to end the war and contribute to saving the life of those who are affected by this war inside Sudan. I understand and I learn from my personal experience. Is very, very dangerous to be right when the system is wrong, but never underestimate the power of collective action and solidarity. Whatever you or we collectively are on ground, or either or in ground or in the exile, our voices matters. We should stand up for justice whenever we are, for the right causes, support one another, and keep pushing for a better world with equity, dignity, are not just ideal. Those demands are not just ideas, but reality, impacting each one life. And I believe together we can build a future that rooted in compassion, courage, and coexistence.